So if I'm telling a poem, it's storytelling. If I'm acting, it's storytelling. It's here to facilitate story. And so I had a bunch of friends come. I begged 8 of my friends to take a 4-week class that I'd never taught before for free. And they said yes. They agreed for free. They agreed to take something I've never taught. And a bunch of people came up to me after. When's your next one? Cool. That was 8 more people at $15. And then it happened again. And then it was like 8 people at $25. And then it was 8 people at $50. And then it was thousands of people. I taught for years. I traveled the world teaching storytelling. And it's some of the greatest memories and times of my life. And I've made some of the best friends from people who took my class. Because you want to meet somebody, share stories with them. That's how you like really meet somebody.
So you said everything is a story. And it's either a story we've been made to believe, or it's a story we've chosen to believe, and knowing the difference is profound. Can you give us an example of that in your own life? A story that you were made to believe versus one that you chose to believe?
Yeah, it's the boys on TV, right? It's thinking I needed to be and sound like them in order to be worthy of having a story worth telling. Mm. It's hustle culture. It's thinking I need to go, do, have. What's next? Versus like nap as resistance. Take a nap. You ain't gotta hustle so much. Like you get to enjoy your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's unplugging from the gaze, and that can, often in my work, it's the gaze of whiteness, but it's also the gaze of capitalism. It's the gaze of colonialism. It's the gaze of the American dream. All of this has been put on you from the moment you were born, trying to tell you what you're worthy of and capable of. And I believed so much of these stories about myself. And it wasn't until I started unplugging, doing that matrix work. You've seen the matrix. It's hard to wake up. So you got to pull these friggin' tubes out of your spine and your neck. Like, until I started putting my freedom out loud and reclaiming my story and my experience, no one took notice. But all of a sudden, when I wasn't trying to, get it right or be like them, all of a sudden everyone was like, oh, tight, this is great. So that's what I mean. Like it's exactly, that's my motto of teaching. It's all a story you've been made to believe or chosen to believe, knowing the difference is profound. Or, until the lion learns to write, every story will glorify the hunter. This is why the lion must write. We need to take back our stories and our experiences and our truths. And that's in small ways and large ways. It's in societal ways, but it's also in your relationships, in your practices, in your habits, right? Why am I doing this? Who's it for? Me or someone else?
Mm-hmm. So you have 3 profound projects that you've created in the last few years. One, The Real James Bond, was Dominican. Your book, Brown Enough, and the Ruby Rosa podcast, which is not a small feat. I listened to that, and it was like, it's very highly produced, and you list off the credits of 20 people at the end of each episode. So how did you know which one to do first, second, third? Because I know how the creative process is for myself. Some of these ideas, you've been thinking about it for years before you finally get traction on it. And how The Real James Bond was shelved. So talk about that process of creating those works, and how you decided to prioritize them.
Yeah, so I can't take credit. The universe is kind of like, I gotta give
shout out to the universe.
I gotta give the universe credit, and because Lord knows I had plans, and God laughs at plans a lot. Like, and I believe in being moved. That's something I hold in high regard. Maybe attach it to my curiosity, but like I allow myself to be moved. In the opening of the book, I talk about being moved and asking people to allow themselves to be moved. Movement is what draws me to my curiosity. Like, I see an article and I'm like, oh, this clearly moves something deep inside my spirit. Let me go with it. Someone says something at a talk. Ooh, this clearly moves, I'm like really intimate with what moves me. And so I wrote the play. I did the play with my whole heart in it. That's another thing. I put my heart into it. I'm always writing, always, always, always writing. I don't know what it's for. That's another thing I believe in. Like, just write, just make whatever your thing is, just go. Like, how the puzzle will fall into place will be revealed to you. But, don't wait for someone to give you the final picture of the puzzle for you to start putting the pieces together and making the art. So I'm always writing. We're doing the play. My whole heart is in it. The New York Times thing happens. Someone meets me at I teach on the board of this incredible organization that, do you know Creative Futures? Are you a part of that?
No.
It's a mentorship program for disenfranchised youth and young adults. We put them through this incredible 12-week training. Mine is the storytelling, obviously. And we get them paid jobs with some insane companies. I mean, these are like youth that just got out of prison, early motherhood, bad luck, homelessness. And we go to like Apple Music, Spotify, the Rams, and we say, here's this person you would never look at for a job. We put them through this 12-week course. We'll pay them. You don't even have to pay them. Let them come in and work for you. We'll pay them. And if you're happy, after 3 months, give them a job. We have like a 100% success rate. Really incredible. Anyway, I was at an event for that. And this guy met me and he had a podcast. And he said, can I have you on the podcast? Ari Anderson, Millennials Don't Suck is the podcast. And he had me on and he was like, dude, this James Bond thing is insane. What? And the New York Times, this is insane. And he said, we should make that a podcast. Like everyone in the mother was, but he's like, this is crazy. This is crazy. And he met someone else who he told about, you cool if I bring this person in? I was like, sure. Y'all want to find the way to make this thing. And then that got to Stitcher's hands. And Stitcher, those 20 or something people and the genius is there. And you're right, the production. I mean, we flew all over the world for this thing. Like we get FBI files. We interview people who knew the man when he was alive. Like, it's a trip. It's incredible. Really thank God for everyone at Stitcher. And we make this 10-part docuseries, which then also they option the book. So the book is also a podcast, Brown Enough, which is a 40-episode weekly show. That's out now. And the whole time I'm waiting for this book to happen. I meet you, I meet Megan. Megan says I got an agent. I send a proposal to her. Colleen, so patient with me because I didn't really have a book in me, but she really liked what I was talking about or writing about or making. And she helped someone doula. She helped me birth this thing. What's it look like to look at this middle space? And I also believe in community and other people's geniuses and a village. Like, just because my name's on the book, right? Like the podcast, it says Rubidosa with Christoper Rivas, but like, how many people are in the credits? A village of freaking geniuses. And I love being honest about what I don't know. And with the book, I had so many incredible editors and sensitivity readers and people who just believed in me. That's genius too. And all of that sort of gathered in this way, but really that's universe timing. Like, I was talking with my partner the other day, and she said to me, do you remember when you were waiting for all of these things? You were like waiting for the contract, suffering. Like in 1 year, I launched 2 podcasts, did my first series regular on TV, and wrote a book in 1 year. She was like, you were waiting for every single contract all at once. And you were so stressed. You were suffering. And now here we are. And with those projects, they were all supposed to come out earlier and at different times, but they got pushed back and this and this. We're going to wait, and 3 months later and this. And so it's just like, that's universe. Like universe has got they got a timing that I have to fall back on. I got fall back tattooed on my arm somewhere. There you go. You can kind of see it. That's my big reminder. When I'm grasping or pushing too much, I like to fall back. Just fall back. Keep trusting the work and the art.
I know you had the multi-city tour that is it canceled? Is it postponed? Like, what's going to happen with that?
We are going to do the play again. It'll probably be a longer 6-week New York City run.
Okay.
We're focused on this book right now. And yes, we're going to do the play again. There's some other things and pieces of stuff falling into place, but that would be my shout out to the universe in a public way. Like 6-week New York City run, and then lay that baby to rest.
You write every day, and you've taught storytelling.
Yeah.
What's the difference in teaching something versus writing a book full of stories? Like, how was that process for you, this being your first book?
Yeah, so writing, like I said, I write a lot, but mainly like in the notes in my phone. Like I'm just,
me too.
My notes is crazy. And then what happens is it gets so crazy that I usually go, and I'll be honest, I usually go to like Big Sur, and I go to a place without internet and without cell phone service, and I look at all of my writing, all of the puzzles, and I start to see if there's a through line or a theme in them. And that's when I really put that's the work for me. I think for some people, the writing is the work, but I'm very grateful for my ability to like regurgitate onto the page. I can write. That's something I can do. If something moves me, I write it down, voice to text. Like I'm just always sort of giving little tidbits and things and letting my curiosity take me. But the work for me is in the puzzle stuff. Now that I have all these things, do they blend? Can they blend? Do they fit with each other? Like, can I make them fit? Can I? And that's the work that I do every once in a while. Like I've started writing my next book, and it's chaos. But I know I know it's along the things of being an artist. Like I know like it's there, but it's just chaos of a lot. And at some point I will go away, and I will start to layer the pieces together in a semi-orderly way. Yeah.
You describe the book not just the story of woe is me for brown people, but a story of yes is us. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah. I love that you said that. It's one of my favorite lines. I think we really like our traumas right now because we didn't talk about trauma for so long, so good. Yes. Let's talk. Yes. We all have trauma. Trauma's all around us. It's happening. But we are also something worth celebrating. And I didn't want this to be a book of trauma. I wanted this to also be a book of celebration of culture, celebration of identity, celebration of individuality, celebration of curiosity and weirdness and love. And so, yeah, this is not just woe is me, but yay is us. And so I try to create work, and I think I do create work that really celebrates culture. Because there is enough trauma we experience. Yes, we need to talk about it. We also need to talk about the beauty as well.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of that, you said that names can be medicinal. And I think this is a really important point that I want to include in this conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have a medicinal name.
Particularly people who come from different cultures and they come to America and they kind of Americanize their name to make it easy for
that's
white people.
The thing I get the most of now after these readings, which is so interesting because like I'll read something that has nothing to do with a name, right? A section of the book and it is the most common thing I get is like, my name is Malinali. People have been calling me Molly for years. My name is Anu. I've had people calling me Annie. Like, I mean, I get this message so much. Like something cracks in them when they start to feel seen or they're in a space of belonging where they're like, whoa, I've been letting them dictate who I am. I've been letting whiteness and their comfortableness and their inability to pronounce beautiful language, like to dictate who I am, to dim my light, you know, pun intended, no pun intended, all of the above, like, and yeah, our names, they're one part of how beautiful and unique and expressive bodies of culture can be. Culture is. And I use the term bodies of culture because I think we're far more than color. Like, I don't think that whiteness is trying to take away our color. What they're trying to do is assimilate. Assimilate literally means flatten us, right? Like sort of turn brown rice into white rice. Like, you know, like dim it down, make it more even, take away our culture, because it's our culture that makes us beautiful and expressive and unique and flavorful and yummy and vibrant. It's not our color. Your color doesn't make you that way. Your culture makes you that way. Mm-hmm. And so I hope this is a book of celebrating our culture, and anyone with an incredible culture-filled, yummy name, I hope you can return to it if you've lost it.
Who's the avatar for this book? Who did you write it for, primarily?
I'd be lying if I didn't say I wrote it for myself. The more I live in the world with it, the more I know it's for. I want this book in some high schools. This thing needs to be required reading. Y'all, we are actively banned. They're banning books again. Books are being banned. And I will tell you, none of the books being banned are written by white people. None of them. Just let that sit there for a second. Like, I had a teacher at an event from Iowa. She said, House Law 502. In Iowa, it is illegal for a teacher to mention prejudice or bias. It is illegal for a teacher to mention prejudice or bias. How do I show up for my students? She asked me. Give them this book. You don't have to say why you're giving it to them. Like, give them the book. Just give it to them. That's all. That's what I want. And, you know, the more I see it, I'm like, man, I wish I had this book. Because look what John Leguizamo did to me. That's one moment. That's one moment. One moment gave me enough armor to chase my dreams for the rest of my life. That's just one moment. White people get 197 moments by the time they're 8. Like, I have one. And so I want this to be armor for the youth. I want this to be hopefully their one moment that gives them the courage to follow their dream.
Let's take it back, man, to Forest Hills, Queens, early days. You, your sister, your parents, family of 4 growing up in this melting pot of a building. And your parents were the supers of the building. So for people who don't live in New York, what does that mean? Someone's a super of the building.
Yep. My pops was the super. My mom worked at like a OBGYN office, but my dad was the super, and superintendent, the porter, the handyman, I think, like whatever, the building manager. But in New York, it's the super. Everyone knows a super, knows their super in New York. Maybe it's an East Coast thing. I'm not 100% sure.
I think it's a New York thing. No,
Maybe, yeah, maybe it's
I've
just
never
in New
heard
York.
that until I moved to New York. And of course, you know, like I wanted to put an air conditioner in my apartment one time in Harlem and had to go through the super. The super shovels the snow, the super salts the sidewalk outside of the building, make sure the trash goes out, you know, whatever is not happening. Oh, and collects the rent.
Yeah.
Super collects rent.
And
So
hopefully gets Christmas gifts. That was my dad's dig. You know, like you want that air conditioning in on time and you want all the stuff. Like think of me during Christmas.
so talk about what well, actually, let me ask you this: back in those early days? I heard you mention on your podcast, on the Ruby Rosa podcast. You said as a kid, you liked being in the boiler room and watching the fire and all that. You've also told stories about pretending like you were a spy. What were some of your favorite toys or activities as a child, or was it one of those two things?
Yeah, so one of the joys of having a pops as the super is I kind of went into all the crevices and cracks of the building. You know, you go to
Mm-hmm.
the compactor room, even like where they, for people who don't know, in New York, a lot of buildings have trash chutes. So everyone was throwing these bags, these trash bags down these chutes, and that goes somewhere. And there's this insane, incredible machine, the compactor, that like takes all this trash and freaking whatever force crushes that like into a little box that can then go in a bag. And I would be in there. I don't know why I would hang out in these places. The boiler room, I loved it so much. Like imagine just one giant thing, like fire blazing thing at all times that's giving heat to a build, you know, to hundreds of families and people and keeping us warm. I think I was fascinated by that like if this one little thing goes out, you know, everyone's upset. Everyone's cold. Uh, and I would be in the boiler room a lot watching the fire because I would just, damn, it's like, it's hot in there. This one thing is keeping these many people warm. Uh, all these little rooms in the basement. My dad had a shop room. He had a storage room. I would play in the storage room a lot. You know, we got to keep stuff down there. I would run around down there. I would roller skate downstairs in the basement. We had room. Uh, it was just really cool to have access to all of that. It helped my imagination. It helped me be the little kid who, you know, you listen to the Ruby Rosa podcast. I loved creating adventures with my Nerf guns uh, and instead of just doing it in my apartment, you know, pretending I was some spy or some assassin, I would do it in the building and I would run around and I'd hang around crevices and I didn't care if people saw me because everybody knew me uh, because I was a super's kid and everybody, you know, it felt like actually had love for me. You know, there was no hate in that building, which seems like such a blessing, but also such a rarity because I don't really know my neighbors now. I don't think a lot of us know our neighbors. Um, and I don't know if that just happened because my pops was a super or because it was a different time where we knew our neighbors. And I think about that a lot, like community. Who's living? They're technically kind of living with you. They're not living with you, but they're living with you. And what does it mean to know our community and our neighbors in that way? So that was a really special time that's super impactful. Like you said, the melting pot. Queens is a melting pot. I think it's actually one of the most diverse places in the world. Jackson Heights, where my grandma lived, we actually know is the most diverse place in the world. That is saying something. That's incredible. Every food, every culture, every religion, every person, every hip, every flavor is in Jackson Heights. And that is so incredible. Yeah.
Speaking of culture, because it's a central part of your work, can you talk about your cultural,
Yeah.
your heritage, your
My
background?
pops is Dominican and my mother's
Mm-hmm.
Colombian. And we're New Yorkers, you know. Well, my mom was born in Colombia, so she's an immigrant, came here as a little girl. My dad and I were actually born in the same hospital on the Upper East Side, New York Women's Presbyterian. But then he spent a lot of time in the DR. And they are two sort of young kids who grew up in New York who had a baby very young and were figuring it out. They're huge inspirations to me of what it means to just keep moving forward and make something out of nothing. You know, I call them like alchemic teachers, alchemy 101. And culture is a big part of my work. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that at some point in my life, I woke up to the idea that I was like, oh, I have a feeling my culture is far more than just good music and good food. Like when I was a kid, I knew I was these things, but I didn't get the history of them. I didn't know what it meant to what's in my blood as a Dominican or as a Colombian. And now, as I've evolved and asked bigger questions about assimilation and pretending and what it means to be a body of culture or a first gen kid in this world or a second gen, what do we lose when we're trying to make it in America? What did our parents lose that they didn't give to their kids? And so I ask those questions a lot in my work, especially as a Dominican. It's like, oh, and my blood is one of the worst genocides in the history of the world. Trujillo against the 30,000 Haitians. And my blood is anti-Blackness. In Colombia, same thing, taking all the Black people and shipping them off to Cartagena and calling it the Chocolate City, which we once called DC. And I think culture is really important, not just to be like, damn, my culture is beautiful. Like, my culture is this and this, but like, oh, no, my culture is violent and sad and depressed and confused. And that if we understand our culture from beginning to end, the way you sort of describe this podcast, right? Like, I want to take the journey. When we understand, and you work in mindfulness and meditation and all of this, it's really about seeing what really is, like the whole spectrum. And I'm interested in that in my work, going deeper.
Were these conversations you had as a child with your parents?
No. That's why it's like a late birthing, late need, late desire, whatever you want to call it. Because I did not have these conversations.
What was some of the ideologies or philosophies that were echoed in your house to you and your sister growing up that you remember?
Oh, there were no ideologies, like literally my parents were just,
because they were salsa dancers. Were they like, life is a party, let's just
they were
fun.
dancing in the house, right? Like that's what I mean. Mm-hmm. They danced in the house. We got Colombian breakfast twice a week. We got a Dominican breakfast, but we also ate frozen tortellini, and we lived in New York. I lived in Queens, so I was eating hummus every day at the Greek spot on the corner, and then I had Chinese food over here, and like they just were. These are two people who, before I was born, were living in a studio apartment in New York with a mattress on the floor with my sister. Mm-hmm. Like, and then I come along and my dad gets this job as a super, thank God, free rent, but I didn't have my own bedroom until I went to college. I didn't even have my own bedroom because I was living in a dorm. Like, they went from a studio to a 1-bedroom to a 2, which means my sister got a bedroom, but I had to partition off the living room. They were just hustling. Like,
was he college educated, your dad?
No, neither of them were.
So was that important for them? Like, want you and your sister to go to college and
the American dream, right? That's what it says. It sells you that. And, that's a big part of my work is I think America is the first pyramid scheme. Like, I think
American,
the American dream, right? That's the chapter in the book. Like, I think they sell you something, but then they want to do nothing to support you. They say like, you need this and the most expensive education, but do you? And so my parents, of course, they wanted us to go to college because that's what happens, right? If you raise your kid hard enough and you work enough jobs, at one point my parents were working 2 jobs each, and I rarely saw them, like just to buy their first house and just to maintain this middle class perception, of the American dream, of the con, of the pyramid scheme. Work hard to give us the money we lent you, just to give it back to us.
Mm-hmm. And who would tell you had bad hair, you were Moreno as a child?
Yeah, that's but it's jokes, right? They tell you, but it's ha funny. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a line in my play that says, who here hasn't been called big nose by someone we love? Right. And it's a joke. It's all these jokes that are, or these hurtful things that are disguised as jokes. Like, so if Chris has the thickest hair in the family, which I did, it's like, oh, he must be adopted. He must be this, or he has the biggest lips, or it's a joke. But and later on in my life, you're like, where do those jokes come from? Why do we maintain these jokes and think they're funny? And why does this narrative exist? And why does my Black grandmother not think she's Black? Like, where does that really come from?
But as a kid, how did those jokes affect you? Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's more unconscious than conscious, but they affected me a lot. You know, it's also because I was a kid who got a lot of my education from the television. I wanted to be like the boys on TV, and the boys on TV didn't look like me, and they didn't have my thick hair, and they didn't have my lips or my nose, and they didn't have the big ears, you know, like they didn't have me and my features, nor did they look like my pops.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you hear those comments and you're like, damn, I only think the only way I get to the TV or have a story worth telling is if I look a certain way and sound a certain way. That affects you. You know, those things build self-hate in you without you even being conscious of it, without you being aware of it. Last night we had a little event. You know, I was telling you, I had a book reading, and a woman started crying about something that happened to her on a playground at 8 when someone asked her what color she was. That was 37 years ago. And she's still crying about it. Like, yeah, she didn't know it hurt her then. You know, 37 years later, she's finally in a space where she can share it with people.
You had a very life-changing moment as a child as well. There was a friend of yours named Danny. Can you talk about what happened with Danny and how that affected you, your perspective?
Yeah, so Danny was my best friend, brother, human in the whole world. It's probably the first time he was probably the first person I learned to love that wasn't me or my immediate family. You know, he was my first love. Uh, and we spent every possible second together that we could. And right before Christmas, he got hit by a car and died. And first love, first loss at 13 years old. A loss that was, I mean, devastated me, like devastated me. A loss I didn't have the language to talk about, a loss that I don't actually think my parents had the language to talk about or hold space for. I think in general, as a society, we don't really know how to be there for grief and loss and death. And it really did a number on me. It did a number on my emotions. A lot of my emotions turned into anger. I wasn't angry. I was really angry after that. I started a lot of fights, punched a lot of things, yelled a lot. Like my demeanor changed for many years. And yeah, I mean, that was a huge shift in my life. It was also a huge shift in that building, right? That was so important because he lived in that building too. Everyone lived in that building, y'all. My godfather lived in that building. My godfather's boyfriend lived in that building. Like my dad's mom lived in that building. My dad's sister and her kid lived in that building. You know, our friends, my best friend, my sister's best friend, really was a family. And so the whole building lost a child. You know, I lost my first love, and the whole building lost a child, not to mention his parents who lost a child. And so it's also one of the first times, you know, I didn't have language for this then, but I saw what communal grief was. Yeah, it was my first intimate moment with loss and grief. And I didn't have a way to make space for it then. Yeah, and I'm still, you know, I'm still learning how to make space for those kinds of moments now. Yeah.
Do you remember what I know you were performing already at that point in 13, but what were your aspirations? You know, it's funny, my younger brother, he's got a kid. My younger brother used to deliver food for this fast food restaurant. When his kid was very, very little, like barely able to talk, you would ask him, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he says, I want to deliver food like daddy. You know, kids just look at their father like, you know, especially the father's in the house and you have a good relationship with the father. You look at your father like they're Jesus Christ, basically, and that's what you want to do. Did you what did you see for yourself as a teenager once you got to be big like your dad? Like, what did you want to, how did you want to contribute to the world?
Yeah, I don't think, this is no offense to my pops. I thought my pops was cool. Like I knew my pops was a cool guy. I don't know how, like he just kind of exuded cool. And I knew I wanted to be cool like my pops. Like that's something, if someone had asked me, I knew I didn't want to be a super or anything, but like if someone, I was like, my dad's cool. Like he dresses cool. He is cool. People like him. He's cool. Like he dances well. So I knew I wanted to be cool like my dad. But I saw fifth grade in Peter Pan and my life was changed. Like I saw magic on
and
the
he
stage.
Took you.
He did take me. He took me to see Peter Pan, and I left wanting. I said, I want to be Peter Pan. I want to fly around that stage like I'm Peter. And he said, it's not going to happen because Peter's played by a woman. But like,
did you know that when you saw the play?
No, I had no idea. I had no idea. He also took me to see Beauty and the Beast too. Like I got to see theater as a kid, which was cool, but it was always sort of musicals. And so I knew I wanted to be a performer in the theater, but it wasn't until I saw John Leguizamo at 13 that my entire life changed. Because it's one thing to see a flying white little girl. It's another thing to see a teacup and a beast, and then it's another to see yourself, like just a person, a Colombian kid from Queens. Whoa, like me? Wait, on Broadway? But like not singing, like just being himself and telling stories. And all these people, mainly white people in the audience, are laughing, crying in it without blinking. And my life changed. I remember going home that night and going in the shower and like rehearsing what, who knows, like doing his lines, doing my own lines. Just, I remember a long ass shower because we had one bathroom. So I know it was long because Steve was like, hurry up. Thinking about being in my own play.
You saw it for free. How did that?
I saw all those things for free, I saw all those shows for free. I don't know if that's a good question. I don't know if my parents ever bought tickets to the theater. Like, and that's one of the blessings I think of being in New York, and hopefully, I don't know if you want it enough and like someone's like, hey, we have tickets to this or go to this or, yeah, because we definitely didn't pay for it. But that became what I used to audition for a theater high school. I used it to audition for college.
A freak monologue?
A freak monologue, yeah. You have to do usually like a contemporary and a classical. So I did, I don't remember the Shakespeare's I did. I do remember for college. I did Hamlet. I don't remember for high school. And I did a monologue from Freak for both of them, for high school and then for college, many years later, because I didn't go to college right after high school. And so that's how impactful it was for me, which says a lot. Actually, I haven't thought about that in a minute. It says a lot that for the contemporary, I didn't use someone else's words, meaning like I didn't use like a play that has pretend people. I used something that was someone's life, which is the kind of work I have now mainly make is work that is about my life. So I hadn't put those pieces together, but yeah.
I have one more question about your childhood. Your dad had this game that he taught you to play in the park.
Yeah, where are they going? Where are they coming from? And why do they walk that way? And we play this all the time. And enough that I would just sort of do it on the subway. Like, I think any kid who grew up in New York, their imaginations must be kind of special if you took the subway, because this is way before iPhones and stuff. And so if you weren't a reader, you had probably so many games in your head that you were doing to keep yourself busy. I know I had a bunch of secret games. I would like secretly race people that had no idea I was racing them. Like, you're just doing all this stuff. to keep yourself entertained. And this game my dad taught me was, where are they going? Where are they coming from? Why do they walk that way? And he would often take me out of school early sometimes. Not often, but sometimes he would take me out of school early, and we would go to like Central Park or any park, and we would get some like hot dogs or pizza, and we would watch people at the entrance of a park. And the game is watching someone and asking those three questions. Where are they going? Where are they coming from? Why do they walk that way? And I later came to understand this game and many of my father's coolness, or this thing I considered his coolness, as his ability to fit in as this sort of form of pretend. My dad was also a performance artist and an actor. He could speak just enough of all the languages he needed to speak, and he could speak street, and he could, he had multiple tongues, and he could speak white, and he could speak black, and Puerto Rican, Latino, like he could speak it all. And a lot of that, I think, comes from that game, but also just as I've later come to understand as what we call code switching, as we call the mathematics a body of culture has to do when they walk into a room in order to feel safe and take up space and not be too much and be this and my father was a master at this. He was a master assimilator, pretender, study of human beings. And I think one of the reasons I became such a good performer and artist is because he taught me to look at how I was entering a room and how others were entering a room and how others carry themselves and what it means to carry yourself with confidence and what it means to walk with your head up, your head down, your chest up, or pace or gait. We really studied people. Yeah.
Do you think that's that someone can learn to do that? Or do you think some people are just inherently born more observant than other people? Because later on, you talk about how your dad would tell the girls you're dating, to be careful because Chris is always listening.
And my dad still says that. I was just home, and he was walking into the garage with this Dr. Bronner soap, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm not going to tell you because you're going to write about it or put it in a podcast." It's like, just leave me alone for a sec. So he still, he says it jokingly, but also maybe I will. I just did, right? Like, so yeah. He's not wrong. I don't know if you can be. I think some people are more observant. Yes, I think some people are more thoughtful. Some people, we all receive the universe in different ways. We all have desires we need to express in different ways when we come into this earth or this go around. Can it be trained? Yes, I think so. And I think that's curiosity. I am like so grateful for my curiosity. I'm a curious person. I go into rabbit holes. Like I go through them. I take the journey, right? I take the pill, I open the door, I like go through the journey. I'm grateful for my curiosity, for better and for worse, because it's not always great. But I think it can be trained with practice. But I was a curious person, and I wanted to know how to live in this world, how to operate in this world to the best of my ability. And so I think there is a lot of it is inherent. Because, also some people are so chill and peaceful that they don't really need to be like, they're good. They're just like, this is it. I'm coasting. I'm happy. I'm content. Yeah.
So when you were auditioning for Cal Arts, right, with the Freak monologue, what did you envision for yourself going into your adult life?
Yeah. So after high school, I'd done some theater, some off Broadway, and I didn't go to college. I auditioned only for one school. I thought I was the best actor in the world. So I only auditioned for Juilliard, the acting school of the universe. And I didn't get in. I was shocked. I was like, what? Who only auditions for one school says a lot. I didn't get in. I did some off-Broadway stuff. And then I went to Miami with my family because they were like, we're always moving there. I became a personal trainer on South Beach. Very different life. I think I was like 20 pounds heavier. uh, a lot of muscles. And then, swam on the beach. Just a very different, someone's ideal life. I was living someone's ideal life. But I was not happy. I knew that. And I missed acting. But I also knew, I was like, I don't want to just go back to New York or go to LA. I don't know why I wanted to study it. I think a part of me believed I loved it so much that I wanted to know it intimately. Like I wanted to know its history. And that says a lot about me and my work and culture, right? Like I believe in history. I wanted to know where is this coming from? What does it look like? What does it sound? You know, all the flavors and depths of it. So I auditioned for a bunch of colleges. I got into most of them, and I chose CalArts. What did I envision for myself? I think I've always just envisioned that I would. This is, I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna say it. I always kind of thought I would make it, whatever that is. I always thought I would just be fine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think Brad Pitt or anything. Like, you know, I did not think Brad Pitt, but I was just kind of like, yeah, this is right. I'll do this.
Did you think there would be, did you even think about the idea, the fact that, hey, I'm Latino and I'm going into this, you know, mostly white industry, and there's certain things I may have to do to be accepted or anything like that? I need to hide my heritage, or
Really not
openly...
yet. Not yet, because until I discovered the Rubirosa moment, which we can get into like now or later, like
yeah, go ahead and tell the story, because you met Peter in school, right? He was in the playwriting program.
Yeah, so I didn't think about it when I was auditioning, because maybe it was one of the joys of living in New York, and then I lived in Miami, which is basically little Cuba. Like, you know, I was with my people, and I wasn't under the gaze of whiteness so extremely that Hollywood is. Hollywood is a heightened level of the dangers of whiteness, and CalArts is a bunch of freaks. You know, it's like a bunch of great weirdos and artists. Like, so I felt sort of safe. And you don't know that you're actually only. I didn't know until I read this article. So I'm in college, and my buddy Peter, a playwright, sends me a Vanity Fair article about the Dominican man that James Bond was based on, Porfirio Rubirosa. And my entire world is shattered, because, like I said earlier, I was running around my building pretending to be James Bond with all my Nerf guns on all these missions. I was pretending to be a white British guy. And it clicked. What if I wasn't pretending to be them, but I was allowed to be myself or my father? You know, if this character I loved as a child looked like me, looked like my community, looked like Queens, looked like Light, looked like so many people that are not a white man. And then it's like I saw it. I just saw my difference in this world in an instant. Like, that article in an instant revealed so much to me. Why am I one of the only bodies of culture in this school? What does that mean? The weight of it, the weight of difference. I started to feel it. It was really sort of shocking. And we're talking so much about this. I haven't had the conversation about auditioning for these schools in a long time, but I chose a Leguizamo monologue. Like, I chose, not consciously, work written by a body of color. Like, not consciously, but wow, thank God I did. Like, because there's not so much in the grand scheme. And yes, it was that article that like really it changed my life. That article changed my life, mainly because Rubirosa, this epic slash problematic warning slash aspiring person slash enigma, you know, twice the richest man in the world, lived all over the world, best friends with Sinatra, JFK, the Rat Pack, ran guns for the mob, lived in Hitler's Germany, lived in Fidel's Cuba, raced Ferraris at Le Mans twice, flew B-52 bombers for fun as a hobby, boxed, like, what? Like, and just sort of vanishes from society. He also was obsessed with whiteness and the white gaze to the point where it made him change his body, you know, get a nose job, whiten his skin, to the point where it didn't allow him to speak up against this horrible, horrendous genocide, to the point where I think it drove him to his death, quite literally, this need to be seen by others. Tried to be an actor in Hollywood, was denied. Crazy, just crazy story. And it really changed my life. And from that moment, I started to know, what is my culture? What didn't I learn? What conversations didn't I have with my parents? All this, yeah. Why did my manager want me to cut my hair and get a nose job and all of this stuff? Hollywood and all of that, yeah.
I know you did a deep dive into his life, which culminated in a play, right, called The Real James Bond. But what was the timeline of that, from you first reading that article to you completing that one-man show, completing the writing of the one-man show?
A long time. I believe the first draft of the play in my computer was 2014. That's of the play. I read the article in 2011. Like, so
it's not a long time, man.
Oh, that's not a long time?
In the creative process, like, it took me 3 years to finish my first book. I mean, I get it. You know, you're like, you're sleeping in your car, and you know, it's a lot of stuff has gone on between you first reading the article and you finishing that play. But there's one other moment.
Well, that's the draft. College. That's not when we performed it.
Okay.
That's a draft where I invite people to my house. I'm like house sitting in to hear it, to hear a bad play. That's like a bad version. You know, it was alive in me for so long. We didn't premiere it until 2018, 2019.
Right. And then you were supposed to go on tour right before the pandemic.
Oh, a huge tour. It was going to be epic.
Yeah. I want to talk about how you got into meditation, because that's a funny story that also happened in college.
Yeah.
And by the way, these stories, most of them are in your book. So, you know, obviously if people want to get the detailed version of the story, then they'll have to go and read the book.
Yeah, I was in college, and a beautiful young woman was across the grassy knoll, and she came over to me and she said, we'd never spoken, and she said, "Do you meditate?" And I said, "Yes." Not only did I say yes, I said, "I meditate twice a day."
You're like, "I just finished meditating," or something. Yeah. You should ask that.
She could have asked me anything, and I would have said yes to anything.
Yeah. Do you fly fish? Yep.
Yep. I love fly fishing. You know, it's all about the wrist. And I maintained, and we started dating. Like we hung out, we started dating, and I maintained this lie. Meaning, like, she would wake up and she'd be like, "Hey, I'm gonna sit. You want to join me?" And I'd be like, "I gotta get to class. I gotta work on this thing. Like, I'll do it later." Like, I'll work it out. And I mean, I looked into it. Like, I went to the library, looked at like a meditation for dummies book. Like, I tried it actually. It was miserable. It was miserable. You know, 1 to 2 minutes were just like, what am I doing? And then when I turned 21, we've been dating for about a year. And so I maintained this life for like a year. And I turned 21 and she was so excited. Oh my gosh, she couldn't wait to take me. She was so hyped. And I was like, oh, tight. Like maybe she got me those Converse I really wanted. And she had a plane ticket. And she got me a plane ticket to Barre, Massachusetts to attend. We lived in LA, to attend a silent retreat for 7 days. And she started to cry. She was so happy. She was like, I see the work you're putting in. I'm so happy to give this to you. And I was like, oh, cool. Tight. And I didn't tell her, and I went with her. We went together to this silent retreat. And it was the most difficult / greatest thing I have ever done in my entire life. And I have sat every day since and deepened my relationship to Buddhism quite deeply every day since. And we broke up shortly after. I basically told her immediately. I told her immediately after. It's not why we broke up. It's not why we broke up. And it is the greatest lie I've ever told and the greatest gift I've ever received.
Beautiful. Since we're on the subject of relationships, then your friends used to call you the white girl whisperer. And then that led to you having this epiphany that you're no longer going to date white girls, in which case you did the next most obvious thing, which is you wrote a New York Times op-ed about it. How the hell did that happen?
I have a tendency I told you, I go rabbit holes, but I have a tendency to do them publicly, and write them all down. That's just kind of my style, for better or worse. You know, a lot of that actually ties to Rubirosa. A lot of that ties to Rubirosa and the title of this book. I remember this night. So so the book was born the night I went to see Ta-Nehisi Coates give a talk. And he speaks about race in this country, black and white. He's brilliant. Most read article in the history of the internet. I still think so. It might not be anymore. Case for reparations. And black and white. I raised my hand. I said, as Dominican, Colombian, brown kid from Queens, where does that leave me in the conversation? And he said, not in it.
This was a talk you went to. You didn't even want to, you didn't plan to go to this talk.
I didn't even know who he was. I'd never read his work. I read all this.
Somebody was going and said, hey, Chris, you want to go with us?
Yo, someone I had just met who took my storytelling workshop. I used to teach this. Oh, it was so cool. Trade School LA. I think they're actually sort of like different cities have different chapters. But I would teach for them. I would teach a one night, like 3-hour workshop. And instead of for money, people could bring things and you could ask for 5 things. And something I always asked for was an invitation to someplace cool. And I actually, the 3 times that happened were incredible. Like, so highly recommend, if you have the means, to barter in a way where you say, like, offer people to invite you someplace cool. They probably will invite you someplace cool. And so this guy, Hake, who works for the Los Angeles Poverty Department, he was going to this talk. This is what's crazy. I don't even know if I put this specific detail in the book. He didn't have a second ticket. He only had a ticket for himself that he stood online for hours. And he said, I will hold your place in line and then I'll leave when we go in. You should see him more than me. No idea who this guy was. No idea who Ta-Nehisi Coates was. And really, Hake, I've only met for 3 hours in a workshop I taught. And I went, right? Again, curiosity. I love how curious I am. I like go into the rabbit hole. So I got this invitation, hung out with this guy, Hake. We chatted on this line, and he was like, cool, I'm out. And I'm like, are you sure? This is crazy. And he was like, yeah, trust me, just go. So I go. It's in a library in downtown LA, pretty small event. And I asked him this question. I don't know who this man is. And he says, not in it. in this world of black and white. I say, Dominican, Colombian, where am I? And he goes, not in it. And I remember going home freaking shattered. Before I went home, I went to see my girlfriend, who was white at the time. And something just clicked. Like, I was like, what does it mean to not be in it? Where's my dad? Where's Queens? Where's my building? Where's Jackson Heights? Where's brownness is like everything. I thought of meditation. I thought of Buddhism. I thought of like, there is no fixed endpoint. Everything is fluid. Everything is in the middle, right? I thought of gender. I thought of like, what does it mean to be binary? Like, why do we have to be one thing? I thought of this, that, pass, fail. I just thought of like the middle space. And then I thought of Ruby Rosa. And I thought of how many white women he dated and married and was obsessed with. And I thought about every movie I ever saw that showed me some brown dude being saved by some white woman, movie and TV shows. And I thought of every image of beauty I've been shown that, a beautiful woman was white and Eurocentric. I thought of every billboard. I thought of every magazine. I thought of the TV shows. Like, I just got crushed by all this in one moment. What that turned into was me breaking up with my white girlfriend. I couldn't be there. I didn't tell her this. Hard to explain. Like, I didn't tell her this. I just said, it's not you, it's me. Which is true. And then I went on this journey, and I wrote about this. And what I did first was, this was a scene in the play, in that real James Bond play called Please Don't Hate Me for Dating White Women, scene 6. And that scene got sent to the New York Times. And Modern Love.
Who?
This is also crazy. I don't talk about this a lot. I have a bunch of drafts in my email right now, of article pitches I want to make, actually, like, and people I want to reach out to at a certain point, but I kind of don't rush them. They're just like drafts. I have one right now to AOC and her team. Like, I've got one to the Atlantic. Like, these drafts. I have one I'm working on, called The Colonial Capitalistic Hangover, that I want. Like, I just have these drafts, and I had a draft of this scene for Modern Love, but I knew it wasn't ready, and so I don't know how this happened, but I was supposed to send it because it had the play script. It had a draft of what that would look like in essay form, that scene, and it had just the scene. It was a mess, this email, and I thought I was sending it to my friend Brian Sonia Wallace, a brilliant writer. And so I send the email, and I was the wrong draft, and I get a response, an automatic response from the New York Times. Thank you for your submission. We'll let you know. And I was like, oh, what the fuck? No. And I don't know why I do this, as if like these emails are checked. And I send another email to that email that says, don't respond. And I was like, this is a mistake. I didn't mean to send this. My bad. And then I get a phone call the next day from Daniel Jones, the editor of the New York Times. Oh, also, this was like 2:30 in the morning. And he says, I couldn't sleep last night, and I saw an email that said, please don't hate me for dating white women. And I clicked it. And then I immediately saw another email that said this was an accident. And he says, I hope it wasn't an accident, because I'm very interested in this. And he said, I'm also never checking emails. I just couldn't sleep. And so that's kind of how it happened. And then it got published, and it went crazy. Got translated into 7 different languages. It went all over the world. I got death threats. I got marriage proposals. I had couples who got divorced after being together for 14 years because that article communicated what they couldn't communicate with each other. It was really crazy. It was really insane. And so obviously I touched a nerve that like a lot of us are thinking about, but not talking about. And yeah, that's that.
You said you read all of the comments.
Oh my gosh. I read every email and comment. Never do it. Never do it.
So what is it
ever.
psychologically? What is it about you that made you want to read everything, even though you advise other people not to do it?
So, I mean, that's now I know not to do it. Look, if any of y'all are working in anything around race in any way, you are going to get some crazy ass haters going to hate. Like, that's just real. You're going to get some insane things. I think I'd read them all because there were moments of such beauty. I loved that folks were being seen and there was such gratitude. And that was amazing. And, you know, it was mainly that. But then you'd get like someone comparing me to Jim Crow. I was like, what? You'd get ones that were so obviously like, you didn't read this. Like, you didn't read it. Or if you did read it, you couldn't read it. Like, you couldn't read it because you would see that it's great, or that it's a conversation, that it's like, I'm just asking the question, what are we desired to and why? Like, I'm not saying there's nothing in there that says like, don't date white people. What it says is like, no. Why do we sometimes as bodies of culture think that the hand we hold determines our worth more than our own hands? And how much of that is related to media and assimilation? And who am I actually attracted to and why? Really asking the why.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you attracted to this person? And so that's what I do. I just happen to do it publicly, you know, but like for some people, some white supremacist YouTuber with 1 million followers called me the face of woke racism. I was insane. I read them all. Rebecca Solnit in her book Hope talks about at the end of the day, we are survival beings. We have that in our blood, the need to survive. And so when you go out into the jungle's so beautiful. But if you see the tiger, you will never again see the beautiful jungle until the tiger is out of the way. Because the tiger affects your survival. And so your eyes stay focused on the tiger. And I could have gotten I got hundreds and hundreds of beautiful thank you messages, gratitude. I feel seen. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. But the one or two that would pop out were the tigers. And those tigers really hurt me, you know, and they affected my survival. And so that's why I think just don't read it. Like, just don't. That's my thing now. Don't read it. Just, you know, fall back. Don't read it. Do not give them, and do not respond to them. Do not give them the time of day. Also, I guess, you know, with trolling, I have such a still evolving relationship that I'm like, you would never say this to my face. Ever. But that's another trolling conversation for another time.
Well, speaking of curiosity, you've led these storytelling workshops, which is how you and I first interacted, is through your storytelling, the art of storytelling. Talk about the genesis of that and how you sort of leveraged your curiosity into this very vulnerable platform of telling these stories when these things happen to you, and then teaching other people how to tell their stories. And what is the genesis of an impactful story?
Yeah, so I just got to think about this again very recently, actually, which is nice. As a kid, I was always looking for my voice. I was like, am I a theater actor? Ooh, maybe I'm a poet. I do a lot of slam poetry. Maybe I do slam poetry. Maybe I'll be on TV. Ooh, this. What about that? Like, I was always looking for me. I was looking to meet me. And, you know, side note, one of the things I love the most about meditation is a teacher said to me, he said, why do we meditate? And I loved his answer. He said, it's an opportunity to meet ourselves. And I've always kind of held that. So I was using art to meet me, but very, very different like ways. And I was like, what am I? But I always thought I had to be one, right? Because the jack of all trades is the master of none. That has really always kind of fucked with me. Like, and I do a lot of things, y'all. Like I am the multi-hyphenate to the max. And I always judged myself for that tremendously. Can you like all these things? But what are you a master at? Right? You have to be one thing. And then I met this woman in a play, and we went up to Big Sur, and we did a bunch of mushrooms, and we got all our stuff stolen while on mushrooms. And then we found our stuff in the dark on mushrooms in Big Sur. It was crazy. It was one of the greatest, funnest, most enlightening experiences of my life. And it's the first time in my life that I felt the feeling of, I have to share this. I have to tell this story. I don't know why, but I have to. I was like, not only is it funny, it's healing, it's medicinal. It's like, it just like, it met me in such a divine way. I have to tell this story. That's all I had. That was my only thought. Universe comes through. I get an email. My friend is putting together this storytelling competition, kind of like The Moth. Had no idea what The Moth was. Very familiar now. Would you like to participate? And I was like, yes, I would. And I won. And I was like, this is what I can master. This is the funnel.
Which story did you tell that you won with?
The Big Sur mushrooms.
Okay.
With the, yeah. And I was like, this is it. This is what I do. So if I'm telling a poem, it's storytelling. If I'm acting, it's storytelling. If I'm doing this, it's storytelling. Like it's here to facilitate story. And so that night, I had a bunch of friends come, and man, do I have good friends. I begged 8 of my friends to take a 4-week class that I'd never taught before for free on storytelling, and that it would end in a storytelling sharing. And they said yes. They agreed for free. They agreed to take something I've never taught, and spend 4 Tuesdays with me from 6 to 9 p.m. to take this class. And we had a performance at the end, and a bunch of people came up to me after. When's your next one? Cool. That was 8 more people at $15, and then it happened again. And then it was like 8 people at $25. And then it was 8 people at $50. And then it was thousands of people. I taught for years. I traveled the world teaching storytelling. And it's some of the greatest memories and times of my life. And I've made some of the best friends from people who took my class. Because you want to meet somebody, share stories with them. That's how you really meet somebody. And I got to be, I taught this thing. I didn't even know how to teach, and it felt like home. So since then, storytelling has felt like home. And I miss those classes. I mean, I've been busy, but I miss those classes tremendously.
So give us a little snapshot of the anatomy of an impactful story.
An impactful story is, but I think before I do that, I will tell you 3 things you must be able to do when you're crafting a story. Okay. You have to do these in one simple sentence. Keyword simple. Simple, simple, simple. What is this story about? That is so hard for people to answer simple. This is about the time my car got broken into. That's simple, right? But it's like, I was here and then this, and and then my dad, you're like, what? Take Titanic, for example. What is Titanic about? It's about a ship crashing. What happens on that ship is so much beautiful stuff and there's story involved in it, but it's about a ship crashing. Second question. What do you want people to know? But it's got to be simple. I want people to know the love that took place on the boat. I want people to know the cast of characters that took place on the boat. Doesn't mean they can't know more things, but we're getting specific. I want them to know about this diamond that was on that boat. Right? You're sort of picking it. You're getting very specific. I want people to know this. It doesn't have to be holy or profound. Simple is often better. 3, what are you grateful for? Huge question. because we do not share wounds, we share scars.
Mm.
We do not share wounds, we share scars. Now, if you're trained and you're good and you're seasoned and you're conditioned, you can share stories from the rim of the wound, because the rim is what's healing first. And so you can be aware of the wound, but you can also, you're in the healing and you're speaking from that place. And so what are you grateful for? Because even the hardest trauma in your life, if you're here telling me a story about it, you are here telling me a story about it. You've ideally found the medicine. You're here. You can share it with me, you know, and you're more full because of it. So those are the three sort of questions that are essential when I teach class or work with people. Like, you got to answer every story in that way. And then the elements of a good story are just, they're honest. A good story is honest. It knows what it is, hence those questions. A good story is you, it's genuine. And so part of that is when I teach class, I ask my students to get really intimate with what they like and what they don't like. Really intimate. Especially with what you don't like. Like, why does something turn you off? Why does it turn you on? Why does it boil your blood? Why is it boring? Why did you just yawn here? You know, why are you excited? Why are you holding your breath right now? Like, really move through the world in an intimate way where you're like, I'm really aware of what's happening and why I'm so engaged or disengaged right now. And if you get really intimate and yummy with yourself in that way, you will understand what juicy story is.
So you got a book, you got the show, you got these amazing podcasts, you're on a television show going into hopefully the 4th season. How are you thinking about success these days?
Oh, peace. I'm thinking about it as like not thinking about what's next. I'm thinking about spaciousness. Spaciousness has been like my big meditation as of late. I think hustle and what's next and all of that stuff, the American dream, fills up your body. It fills you up. It fills up your mind. And I'm interested in spaciousness, the peace that comes with spaciousness. And I desire to be more spacious. Yeah.
Beautiful, man. I think we should end there. Just want to acknowledge you for your journey, you know, and for not giving up. And we didn't talk about you sleeping in your car and all of that, but you know, you've been through a lot, and it's interesting because when one of the reasons why I like to tell the sort of retrospective journey of someone's life on these podcasts is because I feel like if you just focus on the highlight reels, people don't appreciate how you arrived at this place, and it makes you more relatable. It makes your story more relatable. And I feel like you're doing that for other people through this, you know, the real James Bond narrative that you've taken the baton from those few people who wrote those books, and you're exposing that story to more brown kids to hopefully have the same type of impact that it had on you. And that's not a small passive thing. That takes a lot, you know. And you know, creating a one-man show takes organization, it takes fundraising, it takes promotion, it takes a lot. And writing a book, as I said, is not a passive thing either. So it takes a lot. And just, you know, I just want to celebrate all of the self coaching and motivation you've had to do for yourself going through that process and not knowing what was going to happen on the other side. And thank you for coming on here and sharing your story. Hopefully somebody listening to this today or some point in the future is going to hear your story, and they're going to do a deep dive on to some of the things you talked about and read your book and take the baton and go even further. So thank you very much.
Yeah, take that baton, please. please.
It's a heavy baton.
Yeah,
running with it.
But I think about that, right? Like I've been thinking about ancestry lately. I just want to be a good ancestor. And if that's what that means, you allowed other people to carry the baton to take it even further, then you were a good ancestor.
Bro, this is just the beginning, man. You're still, how old are you right now?
35.
35. Yeah. You're still young, man. So we got a lot more coming from you, Christoper Rivas.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
If you like that video, you're going to love the next one. Click this thumbnail right here, and I'll see you over there.